Halito, great grand rising to everyone, and thank you for joining Dark Matter Radio today. It is a new format that we got going on today, and so what we're going to be doing is every Sunday and Thursday now we're going to be putting out a regular radio show for all to hear, and we're going to be talking about and discussing matters of what's going on in the so-called black community and decolonization. Now, some people might want to say black decolonization, other people might want to say indigenous decolonization. I'm going to say decolonization. And one of the things that we're going to have to understand is that as we talk about this, we have to make sure that we know that the civil rights era is now dead. It's done, finished with. The Black Power movement is over. No more, that's all done. All of those movements were done in the context of the what we would call the purposes of keeping you subdued and under control. Well, that is to say structural abuse and the structural violence system, right? Some people call it a racist system, a supremacist system. I call it a structural abuse system, structural violence system, and I outlined that in a couple of our shows that we had before on this channel. So we're going to be talking about this, and we're going to get right into it. And we're also going to talk about the objectivity of unification and combining ourselves as one people and all that other type stuff, and mistakes that I've made, because I've been making some mistakes as well. As a New Thunder, the leadership of I.N.N.A, the Indigenous Nations of North America, as we were going around the country and looking at a whole bunch of things and trying to unify the people and trying to get them to come together. And we're going to talk about the things that I've seen, things that I talked about. And when it comes down to it, we'll call people out that we have to. But right now, I'm just calling out leadership, and seeing as to why we failed, where we failed, and all that other type stuff. So this is the new format we're going to be using. No longer going to be on Blog Talk Radio. That's it. We're going to be using the format on the internet, and we're also going to be using the format on .org. And we're going to be doing that. We're also going to be doing things out in the public as far as doing conferences, presentations, and a lots of different types of communities. And, while we're out there, get out there and see us. Get out there and come and take a look as to what's actually going on into your community. We'll talk about how to develop a community government. We'll talk about how to develop leadership, how to identify false leadership. We'll talk about the decolonization efforts and critical mass and a lot of the other things that are going on. We're going to be talking about a lot of those things out there on the road. So here on Dark Matter Radio, we're going to be getting into a lot of these deep discussions. And again, the first thing that I said when I was on, when we first came on, is that this program is to get into your face and to call you out, right? Make you think about things. Make you think about who and what you are as beings of people. Make you think about what's going on with your history. Make you think about who you're supporting and why, right? Who you're giving money to and who you're not getting money to. So, I'm not asking for any friends out there anymore. That's one of the things that I made mistakes. I'm not asking for people to really combine. If you want to, you want to. If you don't, you don't. But I'm telling you right now, the new era is decolonization. All this other stuff that's going on out there is useless in terms of the so-called African American community, so-called black community, so-called indigenous or aboriginal community. If they're not talking about decolonization as a whole unit of people all over North America, then they're not talking about anything at all. If they are talking about working with the government forces, if they're talking about court systems and all that other type stuff, they are not working in your best interest. In fact, they're still working on the same old interests as they were doing with the civil rights, deconstruction, and trying to get out of slavery, right? The Black Power movement resorted to all that stuff. It started as that, they should have their control over their own economics and their own neighborhoods and stuff like that. But the problem with the Black Power movement is, again, it did not take you out of the system, did not take you out of the structural abuse system, did not take you out of the structural violence system. It did not take you out of the system at all. In fact, it didn't even identify who you truly were and even deal with that fact. And that's something that we're going to have to really, really deal with in terms of us being here in North America. So all the leadership that's out there, and again, we don't deal with religion. And the reason why we don't deal with religion is because religion is a really, really strong hold of the structural abuse system of the world, right? I don't care if you're Islamic, from Islam. I don't care if you're a Hebrew. I don't care if you're a Christian, or any kind of Christian, Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, or whatever the situation may be. Don't deal with any of that stuff either. The only thing that we deal with is the movement forward process of what we as beings of people, in truth, have to go through in order for us to be truly, truly out of this structural abuse, structural violence system that everyone is now in. So, when it comes down to leadership, let's talk about leadership for a minute. Leadership, there are no leaders, all right? A leader is somebody who's able to protect their people. Right, that's what a leader is, right? So if you have somebody that's able to protect you and get you out of the system and get you out of all the things that you're into and being able to start up all kinds of stuff, and you have a safe haven, then you have somebody who's actually really worth following. So I don't really consider myself a leader. I consider myself an ambassador. I consider myself somebody who's out there trying to do something to try to unify the people in order for us to be able to move forward. I consider myself part of the solution structure and not part of the destruction structure, or the structure that is trying to impose a will to keep things as status quo. Anything else other than decolonization, anything else other than self-healing, anything else than providing programs to heal your people mentally, socially, physically, and even land healing is, again, keeping you inside of a system and keeping you in the structural abuse system, keeping you in the structural violence system, and it's no good for anybody. So, and again, you're going to have to decide for yourself what you want for yourself, what you want for your community. Now, when you look around, your leadership, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and a lot of these other people that are out there that the world has put out there as your leadership, right? They sanctioned them as your leader, right? They talk for you. That's the reason why you're called an African American today, right? They destroy your organizations, infiltrate them, and then what they do is they kill off the leadership, and then the other leadership, what they do is they take a hold of them and they get you to go down different avenues where you're not supposed to be going at all. That happened with the Black Panther Party. That happened with a lot of the other type of organizations that we have, including the Christians, Martin Luther King, right? That happened with the Black Muslim movement. It happened with all of them, right? And this is the reason why we find that our society right now, we're talking about leadership, our society right now is in the situation that we're in right now because they led us to the desires of the structural abuse system, to the desires of the structural violence system, to the desires of how the system wanted us to really go. And again, what they did, they put us in loop fashion. So even in Reconstruction, when they're trying to get everybody over to Africa, develop that Libya crap and all that other type stuff, a loop, right? They took you away from who you are, what you are. They did everything in their power to separate you from your land. They did everything in their power to separate you from your identity. They did everything in their power to separate you from your family. They did everything in their power to put you in a position of survival, right? Survival. And that's the only thing that you can think about. And the next thing you know, you're abusing your women. This is the reason why a lot of these women groups have sprouted up and they get themselves distanced from a lot of the men, including in the 60s, because what happened in the 60s, again, the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, and all that other type of stuff was going on, the sexual revolution was going on, all that stuff was there just to divide, conquer, and rip the black family apart, and to make sure that the society itself was constantly in jobs. Right? So in that way, you thought you were getting something that you weren't really getting, but you did get integration. Now, is there anything wrong with integration? No, nothing wrong with integration. But the thing about integration is that it took you away from the family. It took you away from your businesses. It took you away from who and what you are in terms of dealing what you're dealing with. Now, integration is good for everyone, but we have the Italians. Italians have their little niche, and they live amongst themselves, right? But they also develop things in the mainstream of society. Same things with the Koreans. They do the same exact thing. They have their little niche. They support themselves. They live amongst themselves. But then again, they put their businesses out in the mainstream of society so everybody can buy from them, right? Including you and your hair products and all that other type stuff, right? Then you have the Jews who did that, who came into your communities, right? But they also live in their areas. They have their own language. They have their own things that they do in their societies, right? Their rituals and all that other type stuff, their own religion. They all are combined together and they stick together, right? This is what they do, right? And then you have the Spanish, right? Whether it's Dominican, whether it's Cuban, Puerto Ricans, whether it's Mexicans or El Salvadorians or any of those kinds of things, you'll find them all living in separate communities, right? And then in the main society, what happens is they call themselves Hispanics, right? In the mainstream of stuff, but they support each other. And that's what they do. And then what happened with the blacks? So-called blacks, so-called African Americans, the real indigenous beings of this planet or of this land, they live in the mainstream. That's what they do. They live in the mainstream. They don't have any real niches and nooks except for the ghetto. In the ghetto, they don't have anything because they don't support themselves. They don't support anything. They are totally dependent on a system that was geared on the onset to eradicate them off the face of the earth. And they're still dependent on that system. And the leadership, your leadership, right? I don't care if it's from your local church. I don't care if it's from your local college. I don't care if it's from your local community organization. They all work in a governmental type situation as to where they are constantly putting you back underneath and recycling you inside of this structural abuse type system. That's what they're doing. Right? Whether or not if you're, what they call you as black, whether or not if they call you an African American, and even now today, the indigenous movement or the aboriginal movement, all of them, if they're not talking about decolonization, if they're not talking about getting you into a system that you actually came out of before the war started, back before 1492, and before all the slave type systems started, if they're not talking about decolonization and getting you out of the system and putting you into a place that's going to be safe for you, they're not talking about anything more than keeping you underneath this structural abuse system. Neil Forrest said, and he said it very well, that we're all in jail, right? Look at it, we're all in jail. And the only thing that these people in jail are doing is trying to get a better deal for themselves. Some people might put up a garden. Some people might put up curtains. Some people might put up a window or something like that over the jail bars, right? Some people might, say, we got this society going over here. We said, well, this type of society. But all that leadership, it's not geared to get you out of the jail. It's geared for you to stay in jail and make you comfortable in there. Comfortable just enough. Just enough so you don't complain about your condition. Just enough so that you don't riot and do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Because if you did really try to riot and do that phony thing called a revolution, what they do is that they bring everybody, all the guards around and stuff like that. They're government forces. They'll stick the guns out there, start shooting people. Right? So you're trapped, double trapped, triple trapped, and quadruple trapped in a system upon which their leadership is supposed to keep you tamed in there, just like they did in slavery days. And then if you revolt, what they do is they rally the troops, they come around you and destroy you. Look what they did over there in Boston back there in the 80s when they were having all those, when they were having some shootings and stuff like that. They shut down the whole entire black community. In fact, they can shut down any black community that they want and stop anything that's going on in those black communities when they want to do it because they have the power. You don't have the power, but they have the power. They have the guns. Right? You say, well, we got guns, but you can never, ever, ever match the power that they have because they won't give you that kind of power. They'll give you enough power to kill yourself, but they won't give you enough power for you to kill them. And if that did happen, then they will shut you down completely, revamp your whole entire society, bring you up so that way you can kill each other properly. And that's the basic line it is. And then your leadership will come around and give you all kinds of pacification and all kinds of medicine talk to keep you subdued. You keep it down, make you feel like things are happening, things are going on, or stuff like that. So that's leadership, right? That's leadership. So if they're not talking about decolonization, if they're not talking about a right to self-determination, if they're not talking about any of these things that are going to really get you out of the system that you're in, and make you feel better, make you do better, right? Make you be able to self-reliant upon yourself, then they're not really talking about anything at all, right? And again, there's a system. There's a system that you have to go through the system to do that, right? And so my thing is that, again, we have to come together as beings of people and do what needs to be done for all of our people, right? And that was my whole entire thing about trying to talk to all these different groups. I traveled all around the country, spent all kinds of money, right? I'm talking about over $20,000 I spent, running all over the place, talking to everybody, seeing this, that, and the other thing. And, one of the things that I found out is that, again, these people, even if they call themselves indigenous, aboriginal, and all this other type stuff, nobody wants to act in the fashion upon which the ancients or our forefathers wanted us to behave in terms of being unselfish and acting passions upon which we should in order for us to take care of our people. Right? I found myself doing the same thing what Shaka Zulu was dealing with, because what Shaka Zulu was trying to do was unify his people over there, unify all the different tribes, unify them under one flag. He wasn't trying to conquer anybody. He wasn't trying to do any of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, time ran out on him because he had to fight against all these colonial powers that were coming in with guns and gunpowder and stuff like that. And if he was able to unify the way that he was able to unify, then he had a fighting chance to be able to beat him back. And remember, they fought for years. They couldn't defeat him. Right? They couldn't defeat him. And unfortunately, they ran out of time with that. But it was bloody. Right? There was bloody wars going on with that. Right? And so one of the things we're facing over here, when I say over here in North America, is again a unification problem, right? And a lot of that unification problem comes in to the lack of understanding. Or I'm not even going to say lack of understanding because people understand what it is, but it is the selfishness of the individual leader who doesn't want to give up their power or who thinks they have to give up their power. And as soon as it comes into it, you have to start compromising with other people, that old programming kicks in place. And this is what you have to understand as a layperson to be able to figure out exactly what leadership is best for you. So the litmus test is, if they're not really talking freedom, they're not talking about anything at all. If they're not talking about decolonization, if they're not talking about a systematic process of decolonization and bringing in the systems to be able to get the healing factors into the community themselves, right? The framework that we need, a governmental type framework that we need in order for the proper services to get to our people. They're not talking about really building an economic system, right? They're not talking about anything at all. It's a systematic thing that we have to do. A systematic thing that we have to do. Decolonization is just part of it, right? It's just part of it. So as the process of decolonization continues to advance, it was in 1960 the General Assembly adopted this landmark declaration on granting the independence of colonial countries and peoples. Since the creation of the United Nations, 80 former colonies have gained their independence. We are colonized. We are occupied still by colonists. We were colonized by the British. We were colonized by the Canadians. We were colonized by the Portuguese. We were colonized by Spain. We even colonized by some African people who are now calling themselves Moors. We were colonized by a whole host of France. Even Germany was over here. And, so we have to understand that, when this United Nations Assembly Declaration came into place, it was something that was done to help the people who are colonized all around the world in order for them to be able to get out of their decolonization. So it's a declaration on granting independence to colonized countries and peoples. And this was a whole entire civilization that they committed war against and tried to wipe them out. So one of the first things about colonization that you need to know is, are you a aboriginal of the land or indigenous to the land upon which you were colonized? Right? So a lot of people, they don't know who they are. So this is one of the reasons why we're going out and we're doing conferences with people and stuff like that, to begin to start teaching the people, giving them the understanding of who and what they are. Now, this information is not new to North American people, because there's people such as Blue Feather, Chief Warhorse, Kerry Davis, Buck Wylam, has been around for years, telling a lot of these kinds of these things about who and what you are. Right? So the understanding this is the reason why we need to begin to start having the mentality of change within ourselves. But it is the basic leadership that we have and that we're choosing, or that they're choosing for us, that puts us in a situation to keep these kinds of things dampened and down. Right? Martin Luther King tried to tell you. Listen to a lot of his different speeches and he'll tell you exactly who the real Aboriginals are, who the real indigenous people of the Americas are. Malcolm X tried to tell you plenty of times. When he came back from Africa, he had a totally different view of who and what he was as being a person. He says, you are an aboriginal. An aborigine. An aborigine is a person who is native to this earth. You don't like to be called an aborigine. An aborigine, because you don't find aboriginals in any other part of the earth. You don't find any white aboriginals. You find dark-skinned aboriginals, copper-colored people aboriginals of various types. That's who you are. That's what Malcolm X was trying to tell you. Listen to some of his speeches. But what happens is that, again, the leadership that are around them, they have to make sure, the bouvier, as they call them, have to make sure that the proper message gets to you. So what they call you is an African. And then they have you to understand that African is a concept of conquered people. It's not the name of the continent. It's the name that was given to the continent and the countries of those people. And that's the reason why the people over there in Africa now, they don't really refer to themselves as African, but as to where they came from. The original name of the original name and the people of that continent we refer to as Ethiopians, which means people of burnt faces. And the continent upon which you came from was originally referred to as Ethiopians, Indigo, India, which means people of burnt faces. But you are of the West, where the sun never sets. Having an understanding of who and what you are, where you come from, settles a whole lot of things in terms of what you're fighting for. So if you consider yourself to be a conquered people from Africa, then what you're fighting is to get back to Africa. And the world will oblige you because they know that you're not from Africa. You're a carbon-based being. Carbon-based being and indigenous to the land of the Americas. Indigenous to the land of the Americas. And you're an aboriginal of this earth. This is where you come from. This is the land you're supposed to be fighting for. So when you begin to start looking at the effects of colonization, it's hard for people to get around and start understanding that they themselves are colonized. And this is why I say you are a part of the structural abuse system, a system where you have absolutely no control over anything in your diaspora. You have no control over your political system. No control over the consequences of your education system or your religious system. You have no control over your housing or your job markets or anything like that. These are the effects of the structural abuse system and of the colonization system that we are in still to this day. We're occupied people. We're on occupied land. We're at war. We're still at war. One of the most important effects of decolonization is the instability of the post-colonial political systems, which entails another far-reaching consequences. This includes deep economic problems, inability of growth, and wielding disparities between north and south parts of the globe. This will have far-reaching consequences on everything. On everything. And it's important for us to understand that. Because if you don't understand that, then you will never, ever, ever be able to get out of the mindset that you're in right now. And a lot of that, again, has to do with our leadership. A lot of that has to do with our leadership. It's important. It's important that we really do what needs to be done in order for us to be able to get ourselves out of a bad mindset. Right? And it's difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult because a lot of it is what our leadership is preaching to us. Because many of us don't know. We don't know, right? We don't know. We're trusting our leadership to be able to lead us to places where we should be able to go. So now the thing that you need to think about, now that you know about this decolonization, we're going to get into that on this radio show and in preceding shows. Are they leading you down brick roads with brick walls with no way out? Are they leading you into a maze that is going to send you around and put you into a computer loop and you can't get out? We're entering into a situation as to where, into a time where you must think of yourselves as being the last generation of your people. It's the unsettling of America. That's what it is. Right? And this is not a theory. It's a fact, because we must begin to start making a choice. You can't say I'm going to deal with the government and then decolonize, or we're going to create our own but deal with the government. It's got to be one or the other. You know, the effects of the cultural bomb. And again, the cultural bomb is what has happened to us when they came over here and started the war. Is to annihilate a people's belief in their names. They call you Negro. They call you African, African American. They call you black. In their language, they stripped you of all your languages. Most people don't even realize that they spoke an ancient dialect, a Paleo-Hebrew over here. Hebrew meaning, is that their language? Or was that their religion? No, it's just that it was a language that they were used over here. And there was a lot of other languages that were here, but they stripped you of that, of their environment. You don't even realize that the land that you're on right now was the Aboriginal Indigenous Beings land that you controlled in your civilization. In their heritage of their struggle, all the things, all these pyramids, all these mounds, all these old copper mines, all these religious sites, all these ancient monuments were built by your people. Built by your people. And that took a whole entire struggle of cultivating not only a educational system, mathematical system, governmental system, but creating a whole entire society. In their unity, you can't even think about unifying with one another, because you're so fixated in your mind and so warped in terms of your thinking that it becomes a detriment when you think about giving up your power. Think about aligning with another person that you were taught to hate. Well, for a long time there, people hated their own color. They hated their own hair, their lips. They hated the color of their eyes. People thought the blue eyes were the way to go. But then when you begin to start understanding about the carbon in your system and why your eyes are brown, because you can see better. Right? Because it helps you shade yourself from the sun. It's an automatic sunscreen. And where the blue eyes are a reflection of the people who have absolutely no melanin in their eyeballs at all. It's just a reflection. It's a reflection, and the reflection of the colors is blue. in their capacity and ultimately in themselves to believe in themselves and to know exactly who and what they are. It makes them see their past as one wasteland of non-achievement and makes them want to distance themselves from that wasteland. You are always told that you are nothing more than a slave, came over here on a slave ship, whipped, beat, and trashed, raped. I mean, to the most horrible, denigrated thing that you can ever think of yourself as being. So anytime that you think of yourself as trying to rise up, you always go back to that negative thinking about how they brought you over here on that slave ship, in the bowels of the slave ship. You had absolutely no power. All that stuff, the majority of that was a lie. Because you were the progenitors of the civilization that was here, that they try to take, that they were taking from you. So you look at it as a wasteland because your whole entire mindset had changed. It makes them want to identify with that which is furthest removed from themselves. For instance, with other people's languages rather than their own. It makes them identify with that which is a decadent and reactionary. All those forces that would stop their own springing of life. And that's why the structural abuse system, the structural violence system that we're in, plants all these things in your mind. Whether it's an Arab coming over here, whether it's another Mexican coming over here, whether it's an Irish person, Italian person, an English person, a British person, an African person coming over here to this land, any other immigrant, the purpose of that is to further distance you from who you are and make you feel as though you're as less as you can ever be, so that you can never spring up to life. So this is the reason why in their religion they're always telling you that you're a sinner. You were born a sinner. You were born no good. You were born lousy. You were born a liar. There's nothing good about you or your soul until you give it over to them. Even plant serious doubts about the moral righteousness of a struggle. The possibility of triumph or victory or seems so remote. And then when somebody comes up and starts talking about decolonization, it says it's a ridiculous dream. That we should have a right to self-determination. The intense results are of despair, despondency, and a collective death wish. And we're seeing that right now with all these laws that they're passing with these abortion laws. New York has passed an abortion law, and that's what got the governor of Virginia and the lieutenant governor of the all kinds of problems. But the abortion laws are all the way up to 9 months now. All the way up to 9 months. You can have it right up to 9 months and past that, because now in Virginia, what they had passed when he was signing into law was that if the baby is born, they can kill it or resuscitate it. And then you take a look at your leadership, even the women leadership. Take a look at this leadership. These people that you have supposedly voted into your quote-unquote Congress to represent you. Foreigners that don't give one damn about you. When they begin to start talking about these abortion issues, what do? They don't even stand up and clap when somebody says this stuff should come to an end. Realizing that over 40% of all the abortions that are happening to quote-unquote black women, indigenous women. These are the babies that are being killed and destroyed. Why, do you say? Because again, we're part of the structural abuse system. They need your genetics. They need your chromosomes, your DNA. This is the reason why you find so many people disappearing all over the place. Hundreds of thousands of youth, black youth, are disappearing all across this country. You remember the Atlanta killings, what they did over there, and how they were killing all these black boys, right? And finding that their testicles and stuff like that were missing. None of those black boys were able to be identified because they were so badly mutilated. I surmise that they weren't in their bodies. That they were bodies from someplace else. But our leadership is corralling us into a place as to where our minds are so warped that we will never be able to get out of it. This is the reason why we have to have that litmus test. So no matter what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're feeling, if you know that you're not moving forward in a certain direction, you're moving backwards, sideways, and every way that you shouldn't be going. Decolonization. Aboriginal, indigenous, quote-unquote, black decolonization. Anyone that was a former slave or here on this side of the earth in North America that was involved in all of this decolonization and all this colonization stuff has to understand that decolonization is the only way to go. Regardless of who you are and where you say you're from. Decolonization is what has to take place. See, the planting and the igniting of this cultural bomb by the colonizing forces has been essential to the colonizing process. For it is in our minds are contaminated with self-hatred and the belief that we are inferior to our colonizers. We will believe in both the necessary and the virtue of our own colonization. And this is the reason why we can't get out of it. Because when somebody brings up, such as myself, that this is the direction that we actually really need to go as beings of people, not as separate entities or just one spot to the other, that we all have to go there together, they frown upon that because they can't realize or even get past their own thinking about what the colonization has done to them. We will begin to diminish the wisdom and the beauty of the indigenous ways of being and embrace the ways of the colonizers as inherently superior. When we believe in their superiority, our motivation to fight for our own liberation is splintered and eventually seriously damaged. However, we do not believe that it can be killed. That density lies within each of us. Still, we accept the cultural bomb. And that cultural bomb was when they came over here and they began to start destroying our civilization. Whether it's through the Moors, whether it's through Mongols, whether it's through the Europeans or the Arabs. The destiny lies within each of us. Still, if we accept the cultural bomb, we would fight for something, our perspectives, to be undesirable. In other words, we'll be fighting for them. And that's what's been happening all along. We'll be fighting to stay within the system. And that's basically what the Civil Rights Movement was all about. The Civil Rights Movement was to move us further into the system and into our colonizers' wishes and our oppressors' wishes. And our oppressors' wishes in order for us to be able to cement ourselves into their system. We weren't cemented in their system until then. We were just trying to get by and trying to survive. Those days are over. So, working towards decolonization then requires us to constantly and critically assess how our minds have been affected by the cultural bomb of colonization. Only then will we be positioned to take action that reflects a rejection of the programming of self-hatred with which we have been indoctrinated with. And it is an indoctrination through our education system, our science, through the commercials that we see. It is an indoctrination through our education system, our governmental system, our religion. Judeo-Christian, Arab, Hebrew. It's an indoctrination. And you fight against that because you have to understand where all these things came from and where they originated from. And who they are infiltrated with. And within all of these things, the truth is there. The truth is there. And only then will we be positioned to take action that reflects the rejection of the programming, of the self-hatred, which we have been indoctrinated. We will also learn to assess the claims of colonizer society regarding its justification for colonization and its sense of superiority. When we regain a belief in the wisdom and the beauty of our traditional ways of being and reject the colonial lies that have inundated us, we will release the pent-up dreams of liberation and again realize the need for resistance of colonization. This volume is directed and meant of information to make your mind understand and see. Critically think of what will help us to work towards our collective decolonization. So I'm not going to ask anybody to join I.N.N.A, the Indigenous Nations of North America, which is something that is for every single North American who was involved in that slave and in the war of when those colonizers came here. It is up to you to make your own choice to be able to do that. Right? You have to decide what's best for you. And that's what decolonization is all about. And that's why we're moving towards that. Right? The process of decolonization, again, continues to advance in our landmark as we begin to start doing the things that we need to do in order for us to be free, truly free, economically. Decolonization is defined as the act of getting rid of colonization, freeing a country from being dependent on another country. An example of decolonization is India becoming independent from England after World War II. Another example is our civilization becoming independent of the English or the American civilization or the British civilization or the Spanish civilization in our time. That's why I say the new era is the era of decolonization. You're going to hear a whole lot of people talking about decolonization. Remember, all right, back in the 90s, I was talking about the right to self-determination and decolonization. I was doing it almost as a Pan-African at that point until I actually learned the truth. And this is the reason why I pulled back on it and had to do a lot more study and research when I found out that a lot of the things in the history that they taught us was a lie and not the truth. Decolonization is a meaningful and active resistance to forces of colonialism that perpetuate the subjugation and or exploitation of our minds, bodies, and lands. Its the ultimate purpose is to overturn the colonial structure and realize indigenous liberation. Indigenous liberation. We're going to have more on decolonization. The United Nations decolonization, and this is one of the things when we sent over the demands, the information to the UN as to what we're looking for. It was all about based on decolonization. It was all about based on the partitioning of the United States, so that we will be able to have a landmass that we control. And it was also based on the fact of protection zones. We'll get into all of those kinds of things. But you have to understand about decolonization is just part of it, because there's a lot of our people who have been socially traumatized and abused physically and violently. And ingrained into your genetic system is all of those hundreds of millions of people that were slaughtered on this land. Do you realize that if you live in New York City, Baltimore, Tampa, Florida, Hernando County, if you live in Atlanta, if you live in Savannah, if you live in Memphis, if you live in Chicago, Detroit, over there in Flint, if you live in any Colorado, Denver, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, if you live over there somewhere in Texas like Dallas, Houston, all of these places, I will tell you, have hundreds of thousands of people that were buried underneath that soil, that were murdered, slaughtered, killed, raped, maimed, tortured to death. That's what you're living on right now. And this is the reason why that we started a program that everywhere that we go, we do ceremonies to heal the land, to heal those souls that were ripped away from us in such a violent way that that you can never really believe. These are the things that are ingrained into your genetic system. This is the reason why our forefathers and grandparents and great-grandparents and their parents were scared to death to even acknowledge who and what they are and where they came from, really. And this is why it was so easy for them to come in onto our lands, even from the very beginning, and start changing every single name that was associated to our civilization. They tried to change it all. They tried to do that over there in the Cali area, but it didn't stick. A lot of it didn't stick. A lot of it did. Some of it didn't. That's the reason why we still know some of the old names of today. Just like a lot of in the Old South, a lot of the names, such as Memphis and a few of these other places. Right? When you start talking about Choctaw and how they tried to change their name to Creek, right? And some people still today are using the name Creek when they should be using the original name, not the name that was given to them by their colonizers, by the people who came over here to commit war on them. This is who we are as beings of people. And this is why we are in a state as to what we're in right now, because it is very difficult for us to be able to get out of it. Because a lot of it is dealing with our leadership. Our leadership, unfortunately, has to change. And until we have a critical mass type system, a critical mass type thing, and that is you, the people who are listening to me, sharing this transmission to as many people as you can. Until there's a critical mass, you will constantly keep on getting the same old thing that you've always been getting, which is insaneness, murder on the street, unemployment, lousy educational system, lousy living conditions, and even those people who are living in really good neighborhoods aren't really living at all either, because a lot of people who are walking in those neighborhoods can get shot and killed any time they want as well. Right? A lot of these leaderships and people that are out there fighting with the government trying to get their land rights and all that other type stuff. I'm telling you right now, the only way that you're going to be able to really truly get your land rights, right, as individuals, people outside of the system, is by decolonization. The only way that you're going to be able to put them in the system as to where you won't have to ever deal with this governmental system ever again is through decolonization. And only through decolonization will you be able to set up your own systems where the people can actually be in a protective environment where they can actually get free. And we're going to talk about abuse. We're going to talk about the psychological abuse that everybody's gone through. Everybody. And if you are a copper-colored person in North America, I don't care if you're in Canada, Alaska, Northern Territories, or all the way down through Mexico. If you're a copper-colored person, carbon-based being, you have gone through a psychological trauma that most races won't be able to get out of, right? Won't be able to heal from. So this is Ronnie McLean, Anu J Thunder for Dark Matter Radio, for Anu Thunder and Alive. This is what we're up against. This is what we're up against. Check yourselves. Again, support Dark Matter Radio, support I.N.N.A, wherever you go. And then again, a lot of ways you can support. Come out and see us when we're out there on the road. You'll start hearing us, right? We're going to be down there in Memphis. We're going to be over there in New Orleans. We're going to be over there in Atlanta. We're going to be just about everywhere, right? And you want to know what? It's regional. Anywhere our people are hurting and getting abused is our region. Is our region. If you want to join, go to www.i-m-indigenous.org, right? Get the email from over there and email us with your information, and we'll send it out to you, right? We'll get into start talking about how to build community nations. We're going to be setting up a lot of online educational systems on how to develop a true independent community nation that will be able to begin the process of healing. Economically, educationally, spiritually. Spiritually is extremely important. Right? Spiritually is extremely important. And until we're able to get this critical mass, until we're able to all come together and start saying, this is exactly what we want, the world is not going to listen to you whatsoever. And the best way is hopefully that unity won't have to be imposed, but it will be a cultural thing that will come up. But we don't have forever to be able to decide what we're going to do, because they will create the unity for us by trying to kill us all off, trying to kill all our new leadership off. So I'll put it out there to you right now. That's what it is. I'll put it out there to you right now. We have to be able to make sure that we are leading our people as leaders in the right direction. We must look at each other as family, not as a separate entity. Whether or not somebody's still calling themselves an African American, black, or whatever. We're all in the same boat. We're on the boat. We're on a boat. And if the boat goes down, we all go down. I was talking to another leader that was in another part of the country, and he was saying, "Well, we have to do things in regions and all this other type of stuff. We all can't, we already got it all together. We already got it all together." Well, there's a lot of people out there who don't have it all together, who need help now. Now. People who are getting shot, killed, and getting ruined, and not getting the right proper type of mental help that they actually really truly need. A lot of things that are going on out there. And so decolonization. Decolonization is an act of the UN in 1960. A lot of the world's countries had signed on to it, except for, I believe, well, I know the United States didn't sign on to it. So that's where there's going to be a problem. And I believe Britain didn't sign on to it. And one of the reasons why they didn't sign on to it, because they know that they are the colonial powers of this area. And if they did sign on to it, that they would have to give up everything. Everything. They don't have a leg to stand on. But this is the reason why we're going to need critical mass. This is the reason why we're going to need you. But you're going to have to make your decision, your choice. Share this with everybody that you can. There's a choice to be made. Either you're going to stay in the same old system that you're in, work in the same old system that you've been working in, and again, what did Einstein say that the definition of insanity is? Is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's what people are doing. They're constantly working in the system, working in the court system, working in the government system, working, electing these people, and thinking that they got it going on, when they're only doing the same thing over and over again, maybe even with a new name. And I'm not going to claim myself to be anything and then constantly act as though I haven't changed. That's a mental issue right there. And that's the reason why you have to check your leadership. You got to check yourself. That's a mental issue right there. If you're going to sign up with somebody, make sure they're signing you up as to where they're putting you in a straight line and not in a loop. It's a mental issue. I think I'm doing the right thing, but I'm still in the loop. Work it all the way out. If you're working within the system now, you're going to be working in the system when you get your freedom. which means that you haven't worked anything. It's just another civil rights movement. If you think you got all the power now, and you're running around trying to do all kinds of things, and you take control of your politics in your area, you take control of your economy in your area, you take control of your school system in your area, and you're still working with inside of the system, that's the Black Power movement right there. That system has failed. Let our people nowhere. You can take control of anything that you want to take control of, but as long as you're part of the structural abuse system, you're done for. Finished. Decolonization and putting yourself, reestablishing yourself back into the system upon which you came out of with additional protections to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself is the only way to go. The only way to go. And if somebody can tell me how dealing with the same old systems that we've been dealing with is going to help us, please explain it to me. Leave it in the comments down below. Leave it in the comments. Explain it to me. How dealing with the same old system, I don't care if you're an indigenous nation, I don't care if you're the largest nation, if you're dealing with the same old system, if you're being recognized at all by anything that you're doing in their system, how's that going to help you? How's that any different from what we've done before in the past? Explain that to me. When I'm out on the road, I want people to explain that to me, how that's going to help us move us forward. I'm about dealing with straight lines and putting in a program that's going to get us out of and into what we actually really should be in, which is a reestablishment of what we came out of originally. But this is a choice. This is a systematic choice as beings of people. This government ain't going to help us. We have no friends over here. And these new people that are being elected into office, it's just an embarrassment. Supporting abortion rules that have an abortion all the way up to 9 months, that's just a bit much for me. Should be a bit much for anybody who has any kind of a soul. Anytime that you have government officials that are aspiring to their effects of having a baby born and killing it, or resuscitating it whenever you feel like it, it is a system upon which it's unnatural to the real, original indigenous being, and you know that in your soul. If your pituitary gland or if your pineal gland is not calcified, and you're able to really connect with the consciousness out there, you know in your soul that those things are not for you. Anybody that can work with the system that is continuously killing their people, if your pituitary gland or your pineal gland, especially, is not calcified, you know in your soul, you know with those glands in your heart that it is not right. It's not right. And you need to be out of this whole entire system. You need to be out of it. You know. And that's why I say, the leadership needs to be checked. Are you any better off now than what you were before slavery? The statistics tell you no, because you still don't own any kind of, you don't own any industries. Even though this is supposed to be the most fabulous economy that we've ever had in history, you're still at the lowest ends of every spectrum and the highest end of every spectrum for everything that good when it comes to medical. You're carbon-based beings, originally from this land. There are some of us who did come from Africa, and over a 500-year period, it was about 300,000 people that came. And out of those 300,000, there was a great deal of them that were recycled from America that came back over here. And a lot of those people that came over here from Africa, out of those 300,000, what was left, died. Not many. That makes it almost like 98% of the people who are originally from the Americas. I want you to think about that. Think about where you're going. Think about how you're going to help your people. Think about how what you're doing is helping your people right now. Because decolonization is where we have to go. And we're going to be talking a lot about that. Decolonization. decolonization of the Aboriginal, Indigenous, so-called black people of the United States, anyone who was involved in that slavery stuff. And I was here for the war. This is Ronnie McQueen for Dark Matter Radio, and a new thunder for Inner Live. Great grand rising to us all.